The autumn wind rolled across the Colorado mountains, carrying the scent of pine, cold water, and distant snow. Edna Marsh stood at her kitchen window, staring toward the dusty road that led to the Broken Bow Ranch. A young man was walking toward the property, not riding, not running, walking. His steps were slow but steady, the steps of someone who had traveled farther than his body wanted to admit. His coat was faded from years of weather. His boots had clearly been repaired more than once. A small scar marked one side of his face, and there was something in his eyes that caught Edna's attention. He looked tired, not lazy, not defeated, just tired. "Someone's coming," she called to her husband. Walter Marsh glanced. Up from the ranch, ledger spread across the table. "Traveler? Looks like it." Walter sighed. The Broken Bow Ranch had survived droughts, harsh winters, and cattle diseases, but now another problem threatened it: time. Walter was 63, Edna was 61. The work never got easier, but their bodies did. They needed help, and the problem was that help often arrived disguised as trouble. The stranger reached the porch and removed his hat before knocking. Edna opened the door. "Ma'am," the young man said respectfully. "My name is Callum Reed." He glanced toward the pastures. "I noticed part of your southern fence is damaged. Looks like cattle could break through if they get pushed." Walter appeared beside his wife. Callum continued, "I've worked cattle most of my life. Horses too. If you need a ranch hand, I'd be willing to earn my keep." Walter studied him carefully. "Where are you from?" "Kansas." "And where are you headed?" Callum paused. "Haven't figured that out yet." Before Walter could answer, a sudden sound echoed across the valley. A loud, urgent cry from the cattle. Walter immediately turned toward the pasture. The herd was moving fast. A section of fence had given way. Several cattle were already pushing toward the tree line. If they disappeared into the mountains, finding them again could take days. Callum reacted instantly. "I need a horse." Walter hesitated only a moment before pointing toward a bay. Gelding, "Take him." Within seconds, Callum was riding, and the old ranch couple watched in silence. The young stranger handled the horse like someone born in the saddle. He disappeared over the hill. 20 minutes later, he returned. Every single cow was with him, not one missing, not one injured. Even Hector, Walter's stubborn border collie, seemed impressed. The dog trotted proudly beside the herd, as if Callum had been his partner for years. When the cattle were safely secured, Callum climbed down from the saddle. "There are actually 3 weak spots in that fence," he explained calmly. "I can repair them tomorrow." Walter exchanged a glance with Edna. Then he nodded. "There's an empty room behind the barn." A small smile appeared on Callum's face. "Thank you." That was how it started. The next morning, Callum was working before sunrise. Nobody told him what to do. He simply noticed problems and fixed them. Broken fences, leaking troughs, loose boards, damaged gates. One by one, the ranch began improving. Weeks passed, then months. Walter discovered that Callum possessed something impossible to teach: good judgment. The young man never rushed, never complained, never cut corners, and somehow he seemed to understand cattle better than most men twice his age. One evening, as snow drifted outside the windows, Edna finally asked the question she had been carrying for months. "What happened to you, Callum?" The young man stared into the fire. For several moments he said nothing. Then he spoke quietly. "My father owned a ranch." Walter looked up. Callum continued. "When he died, he left everything to me." "What happened?" "I was young." His eyes stayed fixed on the flames. "The herd got sick. I borrowed money trying to save it. I thought I could recover." He shook his head. "I couldn't." The room became silent. "The bank took everything." Walter slowly nodded, because he understood. Sometimes life doesn't destroy a person through laziness. Sometimes it destroys them through one mistake at the wrong moment. "I've been moving ever since," Callum admitted, "trying to find where I belong." Edna placed a hand on his shoulder. "Most people are." Winter arrived harder than anyone. Expected temperatures dropped. Water lines froze. Feed costs climbed, and trouble appeared in the form of a wealthy land buyer named Jeremiah Pell. Pell wanted the Broken Bow Ranch. He had been trying to buy it for over a year. When Walter refused, Pell started applying pressure. One cold evening, he arrived with 2 hired men. Walter reached for his rifle. But before he could act,
Callum stepped outside. The young ranch hand walked calmly to the gate. "What can I do for you?"
he asked. Pell looked amused. "I'm here to speak with Walter Marsh." "You can speak with me." Pell laughed. "And who exactly are you?" "Someone responsible for this ranch." The confidence in his voice surprised everyone, even Walter. Pell's smile faded. The conversation grew tense, but Callum never backed down. He never threatened, never raised his voice. He simply stood his ground. Finally, Pell turned his horse. "This isn't over." Callum nodded. "Then come back during daylight." The 3 riders left. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Walter lowered his rifle. That night, something changed. For the first time in years, Walter opened a bottle of whiskey he had been saving for a special occasion. He poured 2 glasses, one for himself, one for Callum. The old rancher looked across the table. "I have an offer." Callum listened. Walter took a deep breath. "Stay through the winter." Callum nodded. Walter continued. "If things keep working the way they have, we'll make you a partner." The room fell silent. Callum looked stunned. "A partner?" Walter nodded. "Not a hired hand," he pointed toward the window. "Someone who helps build what's next." For a moment, Callum couldn't speak. Then he quietly said the only words that mattered. "I'll earn it." The months that followed transformed the Broken Bow ranch. The fences stood stronger. The cattle herd grew healthier. The profits improved. Most importantly, laughter returned to the house, something that had been missing since the death of Walter and Edna's son years earlier. By spring, the partnership was official. Pell stopped returning. The ranch was thriving. One evening, Edna found Callum sitting on a fence overlooking the pasture. The setting sun painted the mountains gold. "You finally stopped running," she said. Callum smiled. Maybe she was right, because sometimes life doesn't give you what you were searching for. Sometimes it gives you what you needed all along: a place to belong, a purpose worth protecting, and people willing to call you family. The Broken Bow Ranch had saved Callum Reed, but in many ways, Callum had saved it too. Part 2. Cowboy Stroy. The first snowfall arrived 3 days after Callum Reed moved into the small room behind the barn. By sunrise, a thin layer of white covered the Broken Bow Ranch. Walter expected to find the young man still asleep. Instead, Callum was already outside. The cattle had been fed, the horses watered, and half the barn floor had been swept clean. Walter stood quietly in the doorway watching him work. The boy never seemed to wait for instructions. He simply noticed what needed doing and did it. That kind of worker was rare. That kind of person was even rarer. Days turned into weeks. The ranch settled into a new rhythm. Every morning before sunrise, Callum checked the fences. Every afternoon he worked with the cattle. Every evening he sat at the supper table with Walter and Edna. Little by little, the empty chair at the table no longer felt quite so empty. One cold afternoon, Walter and Callum rode out to inspect the northern pasture. Snow covered the ground. The wind cut through their coats. Most conversation was wasted energy. Still, after nearly an hour of silence, Walter spoke. "You ride well." Callum shrugged. "My father taught me." Walter nodded. "Mine taught me, too." The silence returned, but somehow it felt different now. Less like strangers sharing space, more like 2 ranchers sharing a job. When they reached the northern fence line, Walter noticed something immediately. Several posts were leaning. One section had nearly collapsed. He sighed. "That'll take us all day." Callum climbed off his horse. He examined the damaged section carefully. Then he shook his head. "No." Walter frowned. "No? 3 hours." Walter laughed. 3 hours? Callum pointed toward the creek. "The ground's soft there. Posts shifted after the last rain." He pointed again. "We replace only the weak supports. Leave the rest." Walter stared at him. The boy was right. By mid-afternoon, the entire fence stood stronger than before, and they had finished in less than 3 hours. As they rode home, Walter couldn't stop thinking about it. Most men solved problems with effort. Callum solved them with thought. That was different. Very different. A Week later, another challenge arrived. A calf disappeared. Losing cattle in the mountains wasn't unusual. Coyotes, cliff storms, 100 things could happen. Still, every animal mattered. Walter organized a search. For 2 days, they found nothing. On the third morning, Callum left. Alone. He returned shortly before sunset. The missing calf walked behind. Him dirty, hungry but alive. Walter stared. Where was it? Trapped. Where? Callum smiled. Exactly where I'd go if I were a frightened calf. Walter laughed harder than he had in months, even. Edna joined in. That night the house felt warmer than usual, not because of the fire, because laughter had returned. Something. The ranch had been missing for years. As winter deepened, Callum became part of daily life. He repaired tools before they broke, stacked firewood before storms arrived, checked feed supplies before shortages appeared. The more Walter watched him, the more he realized something important. Callum wasn't working for meals anymore.